Hello, everybody. You've tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover Making a Murderer, Stephen Avery, and Brendan Dassey. I cover some other cases at times. I go over the documents, the photos, videos, anything case related. Plenty of videos you can check out, just like the one you're about to see. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Doing this video here today to talk about Judge Sutkiewicz and her decision that was made yesterday, Thursday. Yeah, it's, I mean, I get more of an impression this time that she actually did fully read the material in front of her. But then yet again, I kind of, wonder. Because Kratz made the same mistake of referring to those DVDs as 7 CDs in part of the correspondence with the defense counsel, Dean and Jerry. And he made the mistake of calling them 7 CDs at one point. And Kathleen Zellner was even drawing attention to that at one point. But maybe she just didn't read that one, because she clearly only read, literally, the motion originally filed by Zellner. Literally, that is all she read. Yeah. So maybe she didn't get to the points where she was talking about how those DVDs were referred to as CDs by Kratz at one point. But nevertheless, all throughout this decision, she refers to the 7 DVDs as the 7 CDs, which is just kind of odd to me. You'd think, you'd get the certain little details like that correct, because there's a dispute over 7 DVDs and 1 CD that wasn't disclosed. So anyway, but yet, all throughout, she refers to 7 CDs instead of DVDs. I just thought that was strange. There's also the point where she talks about Brendan, and instead of referring to him as Brendan, she writes Brandon. When she's talking about, well, here, I'll talk about that right now. It's having to do with the fact that she's trying to say that Kratz made Dean Strang aware that there was, the Dassey computer, he should look at it, or he should check into it, or something like that, something along those lines or whatever. And she's talking about how Dean and Jerry had talked about this, and what she clearly says right in there that it was talked about as being Brandon's computer instead of Brendan's, which is what it should be, right? So she gets Brendan's name wrong. But the fact is, we know now that wasn't Brendan's computer. Brendan didn't use that computer very much, hardly at all. He's excluded from all but, 113 of the searches out of the thousands. So, yeah. So to call it Brendan's computer, number one, was deception on the part of the prosecution and the state. I mean, all throughout this, she leans heavily on Fassbender's report, the report that Fassbender wrote, talking about the CD. But we all know, well, most of us that have been following along here know, that Fassbender's report was completely whitewashed. It didn't really mention most of the horrific things that were found on that hard drive, and it was once again referring to it as Brendan's computer. And not, when Brendan barely used it. So, all of these misleading things, whitewashed report, referring to it as Brendan's computer, instead of the Dassey computer, or, the computer of the person whose room it was found in. No, it's immediately changed and manipulated, and now it's Brendan's computer. So, and that's when she brings up the point where Dean's saying, well, we don't really need to look at the computer if you guys aren't going to call Brendan Dassey during trial or whatever. Because they thought it was Brendan's computer, because that's what they'd been being told it was. They didn't think they were going to find, exculpatory evidence, potentially to help them elevate Bobby Dassey to the point of where he would meet Denny and be able to be named as a third-party suspect in this, which would have created reasonable doubt for Stephen. That's just A to B to C. That's just how that works. So the fact that she just glosses right over the fact that they were referring to it as Brendan's computer when it was clearly the Dassey computer, and there was clearly certain people that were using it and certain other people in the household that really weren't using it all that much. It seems pretty clear to me at this point. So she glosses right past that, you know, they refer to it as Brendan's when it's clearly the Dassey computer. She to talk about in the beginning, she's telling at the beginning of this document, she's telling everybody what she's going to be reviewing. And she's talking about the very specific order from the Court of Appeals and how she's interpreted that, and basically she interprets that to mean she's only reading the original motion filed by Zellner within the 30 days, 60 days, whatever it was, that was filed with the first with the court there. So she's only reading that. She goes on to say she won't be reading the state's response to that motion, and she will not be reading Zellner's reply to the state on that. So, and she doesn't even mention like the motion to compel or the other things. So this is all strictly dealing with the motion to supplement the record with this CD and a potential Brady violation. So she's strictly just that one document or that one motion filed by Zellner is the only thing that she's basing all of this on. Now, I thought that was interesting, but so there was a lot of things said in all of those motions and responses from the state and replies and all the things that were going on with all those. There was a lot of information that was going back and forth there. And I got to imagine that now that they've been filed with the clerk of the court there in Wisconsin, in Sheboygan, where Angela is, that they are not, all that stuff is now part of the record. Whether she's making a decision on those things or not, all of those replies and responses, all of that stuff is now, to my mind, part of the record, and therefore the Court of Appeals can look at it and review. That's the whole reason this stuff had to go back to the district court, folks, because the Court of Appeals isn't set up to bring evidence in. It's not that kind of a court. So this all goes back to the district court where things get filed and all those things get filed and blah, 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 and all these things become part of the record. Then the record can make its way over to the appeals court, and then the appeals court can review whatever's in the record. So that's the way I see it. So a lot of information was going back and forth. To my mind, the fact that Judge Angela is choosing to ignore a lion's portion of it, that's, you know what, her interpretation of the Court of Appeals led her to believe she should just make a decision on that one motion, that one filing. Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with her. It's gonna go back to the Court of Appeals, and we're gonna see what the Court of Appeals thinks about it, and that's what I'm kind of really eager to see, and I think a lot of people are. But the Court of Appeals remanded this back and retained jurisdiction. Something tells me they're not going to just tolerate ignorance. And what I mean by ignorance is ignoring whatever, all the other things that were filed. That's just, like I said, it's Judge Angela's right to interpret the Court of Appeals. We'll see what the Court of Appeals thinks when it gets back there. That's basically the way I'm looking at it. So, long story short, Judge Angela Sutkiewicz has denied that the withholding of the CD was a Brady violation. She also goes on to say that the state handing it over on December 14th, which is essentially 21 days before Denny's due, and this is over the holidays, folks. This is over Christmas and New Year's. Okay? Right? Right? And they're supposed to review an entire hard drive without having the CD, which would have had a file folder in it that would have immediately tipped them off that, oh boy, yeah, we do need to take a look at this. There's something here that we need to take a look at. They didn't have that CD, so they literally would have had to start going through a computer, those DVDs, over the Christmas break, literally 21 days before Denny was due. To me, that is not enough time There was, especially when you consider the state had it for 8 months. They had it since April. Okay? They had the CD and the DVDs. They had the ability for 8 months to go all through that. And in fact, they were scared to turn it over, and that's why they did it the way they did. On December 14th and 15th or whatever, where they were kind of the report over here on December 9th from Tom Fassbender, which is completely whitewashed and refers to the computer as Brendan's. Then that's on the 9th. And then over here on the 14th, we got Kratz sending over to the 7 DVDs and saying that there's nothing really to see there. But then later on, he's advising Dean Strang that he should take a look at it. All this stuff trying to fly it under the radar. Basically, so that they got it in before trial started. They got it over to the defense before trial started. But in such a way and with such a time crunch that it was going to be a very difficult task for Dean and Jerry to be able to review what was there. Especially when what they were being told by the prosecution is not what it really was. So, there's so many things being misrepresented with this CD, with this computer, the way that the state was handing this stuff over, and the time that they were handing it over. I mean, all of it shows that they were very, very scared of the information on that computer, and they didn't want it to affect their case. Whatever's going on with Judge Angela, I don't know. I don't know much about her. Some people have told me that she's a real, by-the-book judge. Maybe that's what we're seeing here from her. She's just her literal interpretation of the law is maybe not allowing her to see between the lines on this case. I don't know. I really don't. She could just be part of the framework there, the corrupted kind of framework there in Wisconsin. I don't know. I do know that she was on the TikTok Manitowoc has shown pretty aptly that she was on the same board. Was it the battered women's or rights board or whatever it was, that thing that Ken Kratz was on before his sexting scandal and all that stuff, that she was on that with him. So that's kind of an interesting coinky dink. But like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say out loud, or for sure that Judge Angela's, dirty, but I don't know. She does seem to be inclined to not want to deal with the Avery case for whatever reason, whether it be because it's just too big of a mess and she doesn't want to be the one to deal with it, or whether she actually has a vested interest in keeping it down. I don't know. But I don't know that it's going to be kept down. I mean, it's going to go to the Court of Appeals now, and we're going to see what they have to say about all this goings on, and then we'll have a little more idea of where the appeals court stands. And I got to imagine, as I sit here and think about it, somebody like the Court of Appeals or some other entity there in Wisconsin is eventually just going to be is going to get to the point of realizing that this whole mess is making the entire state look bad, and they're going to start wanting to make it go away. I mean, it's not, because it really isn't going away. I mean, look at the support from all over the world. It hasn't all showed up on my wall yet, but it's there, and it's not just here in the United States. There are lots and lots of people around the world that are watching what's going on with this. So it's the embarrassment of it is going to stay there, and you got to imagine eventually somebody's going to be like, "Oh no, we got to deal with this. We got to quit acting like there's no problem, and we got to look at it." And we got to really go over this and see what's what about this. Because that's the one thing that Wisconsin has not done about this. They've refused to try to explain things like about the key, about Colburn and that cabinet, and things that are obviously just wonky and weird and strange. That they feel no responsibility to try to explain some of these strange oddities that most of us are pointing out, going, what's happening here? Right? the sheer, just, acting like approaching those subjects are like the Black Plague or something like that, the way that the state and the prosecution act about that tells me that they have something to hide. And that's just not, that makes it even worse. Then, because we sit here and we perceived that there was something there, but then, but maybe there's an explanation. So we start, calling it out and going, what's going on here? And basically you get everybody sitting on their hands over there in Wisconsin. There's just oddities, things like the one branch of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that didn't have a conflict of interest due to Stevens' 1985 case with Penny Burnson. The one branch, the coroner, is the one branch of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that was turned away from the Teresa Halbach investigation there during that 8-day period at Avery Salvage. The one department that didn't have a conflict of interest. It's just, when you look through this case, you can just see earmarks where they were manipulating and hiding things. And if they're manipulating and hiding so many things, where there's smoke, there's fire. Yeah. So, anyways, that's about it. Just talking a little bit about Judge Angela Sutkiewicz's little decision there that she issued yesterday, and kind of some of my thoughts on it. Like I said, she calls Brandon, which, those of us who are very, very staunch supporters of Brendan, we kind of take offense to that. In the same way that the people who are very, very supportive of the Halbach family and Teresa do not appreciate Teresa's name being misspelled or misspoken. I very much feel the same way about Brendan. I also feel the same way about Teresa, but I feel that same way about Brendan as well. So, whatever. It's a small thing. It's a small thing, and it's not gonna nullify Judge Angela's decision or anything. But I just find it interesting to note little things like that. But what we can look at and go, wow, is that all throughout this 11-page decision, she refers to the 7 CDs many times, at least a dozen, and probably more. And she refers to those 7 DVDs as CDs, and it's just like, wow. Kratz made that same mistake of referring to the DVDs as CDs at one point. Made one of his filings confusing. And yet, here she is doing the same thing. It's like, very strange. Very strange. But anyways, it is what it is. She's denying the evidentiary hearing. She's denying that the CD is a Brady violation. And just straight up, just boom, no, it's not. That's it. End of story. So, yeah. That's about it for this one, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see you.